Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Last time we began asking the question, how do we fulfill uprightness? How do we be upright? Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says that there are two things that need to be done, and we've been talking about the first one, that is preserving our thoughts. And we spoke about 8 ways we can do that. We're at the 9th now. And he says, rahimahullah ta'ala, أن يعلم أن تلك الخواطر بحر من بحور الخيال لا ساحل له, is to always remember that your thoughts are an ocean with no shores. And what does he mean by that? This is an expression in Arabic that's used quite a bit. Meaning, no matter how much you think, there is no shortage of things that you can think about. It's forever. Forever. And I mean, to really understand the reality here, the seriousness of this, there are people who have to be institutionalized permanently, or at least they need 24/7 monitoring. Why? Because their mind, their thoughts are going everywhere. There are people who see things nobody else sees. They literally see, it's called hallucinations, right? They see something nobody else sees. Where are they seeing it? They actually see it. So when someone comes, they taught us in psychology that if someone comes to you as a therapist and says, I have a friend named Bob right here. You don't see Bob. Bob doesn't exist. You know this. Don't tell that person Bob doesn't exist. Why? Because if you do that, they're going to think you're crazy. Because they see it. What's causing them to see it? Their mind. There are people who think they have a daughter or a son that doesn't exist. All that's coming from the mind. So the mind is a very powerful thing. People have used their minds to get to the moon. And people, because of their minds, have to be institutionalized. So this is what it means that it's an ocean with no shores. There's no ends. Just like your desires. Every time you appease your desires, another desire pops up. And if it's the same type of desire, it's going to ask for more and more and more and more. To the extent that Allah says, أَفَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ. There are people whose desires are so glorified in their hearts that they worship their desires. They can reach that level. And there are people who worship their minds. If it's not rational, if it doesn't fit in my mind, I don't accept it, period. Right? Hence, what is sujood? Sujood is putting your mind on the ground. It's as though you are symbolizing, I am submitting my mind to Allah. My mind doesn't take precedence over Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's logical, by the way. You're using your mind to do that. And your heart is also kind of down there as well. So, if the heart enters this, I mean, it could just keep sinking and sinking and sinking and sinking, and to the extent that, there is a condition called autoandrophilia. Autoandrophilia. And what that means is a man who has the desire of behaving like a woman and gets pleasure when they dress and behave like a woman. Right? It's weird, but it can happen. People who desire a rock, for example, they have fetishes over rocks. It can happen over a tree. They build a car. Isn't there a story of a man who married his car or whatever? Or a story of a man who married a cartoon character? Where's all this coming from? All the thoughts. This person is probably constantly thinking about his car until his heart became so attached to the car that he married it. Right? We're laughing because it just sounds funny. But the fact of the matter is, what caused this person to reach that level is something that we have as well. It can happen to us, can't it? Right? So this is serious stuff, and Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi is saying, look, and you have to pay attention to this. And you can drown in the darkness of your own thoughts. Especially when Iblis It's participating in your thoughts. The Prophet ﷺ says, the Iblis or the shayateen, they attack the stray sheep, the sheep that strays away from its flock. What is he teaching us? When you're alone, you're an easier target for Iblis. Yeah. And if you're two people, that's a little bit better. But if you're three, it's even better. Notice, when you're alone, where do your thoughts go? When you're alone. Have you ever noticed that when you're alone, home alone, no one else is around you, your thoughts are more aggressive, more stressful, more... Do you have this? Or am I the only one who experienced this? Okay. Now, before I got married, I used to always have nightmares. Always. And I don't know if you all have this idea in the South Asian world or Central Asian world, but in the Arab world, there's this thing called Abu Rabus. Abu Rabus is this figure that comes to a person's dreams and hurts them. They'll grab, he'll squeeze you, and it's painful. Have you ever had those dreams? No? You ever had a dream where it's actually painful? You feel pain? My son did. Right? So I used to get this quite often. Literally, it's called sleep paralysis, and it's painful.
But you were alone there.
Before I got married, when I was in Jordan, right? I was alone, living alone, everything was alone. But I noticed as soon as I got engaged, it went away. I've never had it again since the moment I got engaged. And I've been thinking, what's the deal? Why does that happen? Why does that happen? Part of it is stress. When a person's under a amount of tremendous stress, whether that's stress because of life, stress, loneliness, whatever it is, these dreams happen more. And so when I get emails, I have these bad dreams, what should I do? I ask them, are you really stressed out? And they almost always say yes. So that's one. Number two, the loneliness, being alone. Shaitan, when you're alone, his presence is there more. But when it's more than one person, his presence weakens. SubhanAllah, I don't know what the reason is, but that's just the case here. So your thoughts can be a blessing for you if it's used to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But your thoughts can also be a darkness that consumes you. Right? فقلب تملك الخواطر بعيد من الفلاح معذب مشغول بما لا يفيد. So a heart that is immersed in the darkness of their thoughts, right, or dark thoughts, let me put it that way, is a person that is distant, that becomes distant from success and is in pain because of their thoughts, and their thoughts bring them no benefit. Bring them no benefit. So it's like darkness upon darkness upon darkness. That's pretty scary. Right? And again, there's an entire field of study that revolves around mental health problems, which are thoughts. Anxiety is what? Fear. Well, where does fear come from? Fear is an emotion, but where does it start? Oh my God, I'm not going to pass the exam. What if I don't pass the exam? I'm going to fail. What are people going to think of me? How am I going to be successful in life? And it's just this, from one thought to another thought to another thought to another thought. And as one therapist told me, some people with mental health conditions, we were having lunch, and I guess something happened to the speakers and did that zzz noise. And he said, you hear that noise? There are people with mental health problems who they're hearing that 24/7. Where's that coming from? Their thoughts, right? So scary stuff. The 10th is أن تلك الخواطر هي وادي الحمقى وأماني الجاهلين فلا تثمر لصاحبها إلا الندامة والخزي وإذا غلبت على القلب أورثته الوسواس وعزلته عن سلطانه وأفسدت عليه رعيته وألقته في الأسر الطويل. He says here that thoughts are the valley of the foolish people. Meaning, a person gets carried away with their thoughts, their imagination, because they're a foolish person. They're inexperienced. So Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi is he's rebuking people who get carried away with their imaginations. Now, what I notice here in the West, a lot of children movies. What is the premise? You have an individual who's a nobody, and by the end of the movie, they find out that they're actually a prince or they're a princess, right?
Yeah.
Cinderella. You had that Wreck-It, whatever, Wreck-It.
Rapunzel.
No, Rapunzel, the same thing.
Yeah.
She knew she was a princess, right?
Yeah, she has, I think,
The long hair, but
yeah.
whatever it is, there's this theme in Disney movies and cartoons where the person is a nobody and they're just kind of and then they realize, wait a minute, I'm actually a princess. Or Cinderella, who goes to the ball and the prince falls in love with her, or the prince comes and they just kind of randomly meet. There are a lot of movies like this, right? Is that realistic? That's as far from reality as you can imagine. It's not going to happen. Yet all these movies are teaching kids randomly your life is going to become better. Because some guy comes or some girl comes and changes your life. A lot of movies are like this. This is an imagination. It's not real. It's not reality. No person became successful, or maybe 99.9% of people who are successful became successful because they worked towards it. Not because some random thing happened. It's not the way it works. So there's a amount of foolishness there. And you have people who go to sleep, and when they go to sleep, our youth, our teenagers are sitting there, they're fantasizing about things. That's dangerous stuff, right? It's serious stuff. It's the comfort of the ignorant people. They retreat to their thoughts to escape realities. Right? It's not practical. It's not real. It's not going to solve problems, but rather it makes the problems worse. To the extent that some of these people, their thoughts become violent. They start fascinating over the idea of killing their classmates, like these school shooters and whatnot. They become fascinated with this thing. They become obsessed with it. Like one person told me, when they interrogate people, when they're looking for a serial killer, and they interrogate potential suspects, they try and find out three things about this person. Do they wet their bed? Do they like to abuse animals? And are they fascinated with fire? They say, why? Because serial killers tend to have these three traits. Right? And notice, they're bizarre. They're very bizarre things. They wet their bed. An adult wetting their bed, that's strange. Right? And this fascination over fire. Why are they fascinated with fire? Fire could be beautiful, it's very useful, but to fantasize over fire is strange. So a person's thoughts, again, as we mentioned, thoughts are your heart speaking to you. So what's going on in your heart, you're going to see in your thoughts. So if you want to know what the state of your heart is, look at your thoughts. If someone's constantly, I hate that person, I got to prove myself that I got this person, the heart is attached to who? To that person. Even though it's coming out in a negative way. وكما أن هذا معلوم في الخواطر النفسانية فهكذا الخواطر الإيمانية الرحمانية هي أصل الخير كله. He says that so this was the last kind of thing, point about thoughts and preserving thoughts. He says, like a person has thoughts that originate in the self. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ وَنَعْلَمُ مَا تُوَسْوِسُ بِهِ نَفْسُهُ. Allah says we created humanity and we know what he or she whispers to himself or herself, meaning their thoughts. Right? So just like there are thoughts that are generated by our heart, there are thoughts that are imani, that are from Iman and from the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the source of all good. So any good thoughts that come to you, what is the source of that? It's not the self. It's definitely not the shaitan. It's going back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فإن أرض القلب فإن أرض القلب متى بذر فيها خواطر الإيمان والخشية والمحبة والإنابة والتصديق بالوعد ورجاء الثواب وسقيت مرة بعد مرة وتعاهدها صاحبها بحفظها ومراعاتها والقيام عليها أثمرت له كل فعل جميل. So just like thoughts, and we said that Iblis will come and throw a thought in your mind to try and bait you. If you take that bait, he'll throw another one, until he leads you to where he wants you to be. The same holds true when it comes to good thoughts. If Allah wants good for you, He'll put a thought in your mind, whether that's coming, from the angels or Allah, whatever. Allah throws that to you. If you take it, another one's going to come. If you take it, so the idea is if you're constantly having good thoughts, whether that's dhikr of Allah, reminding of salah. Don't you find it strange sometimes when you forget about salah and all of a sudden somebody comes and says, you didn't pray? Have you ever had that thought before? Oh, like out of nowhere, oh my God, I didn't pray. Where do you think that's coming from? It's probably an angel, so-and-so, you haven't prayed. Or when you're out, okay, prayer time, when is prayer time? Where am I going to pray? Where am I going to do that? Those thoughts, those good thoughts, that's support from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, assistance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you find yourself, you're thinking about the good things, you're thinking about the things that please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't say, mashallah alayhi, don't say, oh my God, me. Right, but rather be thankful that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala perhaps is allowing the angels to put these things in your mind. And if the more thoughts you have that are good, then the more that's going to positively impact your heart and preserve your heart, and then that's going to lead to you actually acting upon those things. Because remember, every action begins with a thought. That's how it starts. And it's not one thought, it's going to be multiple thoughts, thinking over and over and over and over again until it actually manifests itself into in action. So وَكَانَ ذَلِكَ هُوَ سَيْرَهَا وَجُلَّ عَمَلِهَا وَهَذَا نَافِعٌ لِصَاحِبِهِ بِشَرْطَيْنِ. Anyway, forget about that. So we said that the first way for istiqamah is to preserve your thoughts. The second thing is صِدْقُ التَّأَهُّبِ لِلِقَاءِ اللَّهِ, is being honest and sincere in your preparation to meet Allah. If you want istiqamah, you want uprightness, it's all about the afterlife. That's what it is. The more you, and I've said this to you all many times, the more you consider and you care about the afterlife and your place in the afterlife and your situation in the afterlife, the more it's centered in your life, the more it's central to your life, then the easier it is for you to be upright. Or else, if your concern is this world, what is salah going to benefit you? Why come to the masjid? Why? What's the point? When you have people who come and they should I donate to the masjid, whether it's any masjid, whatever it is, and their mindset is, what do I get out of this? If the person says that what I get out of this is Allah's promise and ajr and hasanat, are they most likely going to give sadaqah? Probably, right? But if they're thinking, what services does the masjid provide me in terms of my worldly well-being? What services do they provide my children in terms of their worldly well-being? Are they likely to give sadaqah? What if their children are older? I've heard this from people. Yeah, but what can the masjid provide me? All my children are older, I'm older, why donate? You see how it works? It's clear this person is just thinking about their worldly well-being, that's it. It's not about worldly well-being, it's about your well-being in the afterlife. That's what it is. And if you're not honest in that, it's going to be quite difficult to be upright in terms of spirituality. Very difficult. Because spirituality is meant to prepare you for the afterlife. Quran, Sunnah are meant to prepare you for the afterlife. The benefits that we get from applying these things in terms of our worldly well-being is a secondary goal of the Sharia, not the primary goal. Right? So, صدق التأهب للقاء الله هو مفتاح جميع الأعمال الصالحة. Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says that this point is the key to all good actions. The key of all of them. If not the afterlife, then why do any righteous deeds? وَالْأَحْوَالِ الْإِيمَانِيَّةِ. Same thing when it comes to Iman. You're not going to be able to unlock your Iman, to open your Iman, to build your Iman without the afterlife being central, because that's the purpose of Iman, the primary purpose. Nor are you going to be able to cross the paths of the salikin, the seekers of Allah, unless the afterlife is your main goal. So if you want uprightness, it has to be about the afterlife. And we live in a time where it's all about the world. Everything is the world. And we're all preoccupied by worldly things. And we're all thinking about what are some fun things to do? What am I going to buy? Like this world has been opened up to us in a way that it's never been opened up to humanity. And you're seeing how the chaos that's causing in people, how it's taking them away from the simplest of logic. All of it is what? Pursuing the world. And then Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says, here's another principle. الناس قسمان. Humanity you can categorize them into two categories. علية وسفلة. Higher beings and lower beings. Or I should say maybe higher, I don't want to say beings. What's the word I was just about to say? Higher, whatever, higher and lower. Let's say فالعلية من عرف الطريق إلى ربه وسلكها قاصدا الوصول إليه وهذا هو الكريم على ربه. So he says that the higher person is the one who has identified the path to Allah. And not only do they know that path, they actually walk that path with the purpose of reaching what's at the end, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a person who is beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the one who's living a higher purpose. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. People of higher purpose and people of lower purpose. Whereas the safila, من لم يعرف الطريق إلى ربه ولم يتعرف عليها فهذا هو اللئيم الذي قال الله تعالى عن فيه ومن يهن الله فما له من مكرم. The person of lower purpose is the one who doesn't know that path to their Lord, nor do they seek to learn it. Right? They have no purpose. They're just kind of wandering around this earth, following their desires. This is the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes as whoever Allah puts in a state of humility or humiliation, then no one can honor them. No one can bring them honor. And the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one. There's only one way of pursuing it, and that is the Quran and Sunnah. That's it. Nothing else is accepted. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. Whoever takes other than Islam as their religion, Allah will never accept it. So all the Muslims out there who feel inferior to non-Muslims and they feel, oh my God, they're better than us, and no, it's okay, we're all going. So long as you're a good person, Allah is not saying that. There's one way to Allah, and it's on His terms, not other people's terms. Not I determine my path to Allah. No. Allah determines your path to Him, period. Right? So the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, and other than that, it's not accepted. And then Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says, well, if the path to Allah is one, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, Subul as-salam, the paths of salam? So He makes it plural, the paths of salam. So if it's one path, why is Allah saying there are multiple paths of salam, of Islam? And Ibn Qayyim says the following. The path to Allah is one. Imagine one road. To give you an analogy in our times today. You have I-5, right? I-5 is one road. Everybody who's on I-5 is going the same direction, right? But on that highway, how many lanes are there? Multiple. Sometimes 3, sometimes 4, sometimes 7, whatever it is. So, despite there being multiple lanes, you could be on any one of those lanes, all those lanes are going the same direction. So, Islam is one. It's the entire highway. But what people do within that highway, which lane they are, differs. So some people, their path to Allah is salah. Other people, their path to Allah is sadaqah. Other people, their path to Allah is fasting. Other people, their path to Allah is the Quran. Other people, the path to Allah is knowledge. Other people, the path to Allah is taking care of their parents. Whatever it is, you have multiple lanes within that highway. Does that make sense? right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this a point, for example, in the end of Surah Al-Furqan, where he, not to get into the details there, he says that, the ibad of Rahman, and he's connoting that they're doing different things. There are different ways you can become a servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah is giving various examples of that. So the idea is, well, where do you fit in this? Where do you fit in it? If you want to put yourself in one of these two categories, people of higher purpose, people of lower purpose, what do you need to know? Well, you need to know, first of all, what is your purpose in life? How do you go about life? What are you doing? What's your vision? Well, how can I determine that? Well, let's have the question, why do you do what you do? Why? What's on your mind when you do the things that you do? Is the afterlife on your mind? Or is just you going about running your daily routines, your daily errands? Is that what's on your mind? The idea is we need to improve. We're a little bit behind, honestly. We're behind in this regard. The afterlife plays a very small role in the average Muslim's life. In fact, the vast majority of Muslims. And so we want to be of the category of the people of the uliya, the higher purpose. How? It begins by adjusting our purpose. Why do we do what we do? What is our goal? Where do we want to end up? What's our vision? Or do we fall under the second category, the category of the people of low purpose? They don't know what they're doing. They're just kind of running their errands because, well, what else am I supposed to do? Well, because I have to eat. That's it. The purpose is very low. It's very limited. So use this as a way of gauging where you are. So السائر إلى الله تعالى والدار الآخرة بل كل سائر إلى مقصد لا يتم سيره ولا يصل إلى مقصوده إلا بقوتين قوة علمية وقوة عملية. He says then, if you want that purpose, you want to be that category of the higher, people of higher purpose, then you need to understand something. Anybody who's following a path, anyone who's pursuing something, their pursuit will not be complete until they acquire two things, two types of strengths. One, strength in knowledge, and two, strength in action. Whatever it is. If you want to become a doctor, well, you need to first of all know how to become a doctor. You need to understand the path. Right? You can't just go and take random classes and think that that's somehow going to lead to becoming a doctor. No. There's a certain path, a curriculum that you need to follow. Okay, your first year, take these classes. Second year, third, become this, choose this major. And then once you get your bachelor's, you apply, etc. You have to take the MCAT, and then. And there's an entire path. If you don't know that, how are you going to become a doctor? You're not going to. And once you know it, you actually have to do it. You have to implement it. You have to follow it. You have to put it into action. So with knowledge, you understand the road. And you understand what to expect. And the more you know it, the easier it is for you to pursue it. Some people enter a field thinking that it's all great and whatnot until they shadow someone in that field. And then they say, you know what? This isn't for me. It's not for me. So they had an amount of knowledge, but when they acquired more knowledge, they realized, you know what? This path, it's not for me. So the more knowledge you have of the path, the easier it is for you to follow that path and to navigate it as well. Also, you begin to avoid the speed bumps. You begin to avoid as Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah calls them, the robbers and the bandits on that road, the shayateen who want to take you and harm you and deter you from that road. The more knowledge you have, right, the easier it is for you to see where you're going, and the easier it is for you to become to follow that path and to avoid the problems and the difficulties of that path. And then you need the actual action. Some people, they know the path, but they never act upon it. They never go about it. And you hear this a lot from business people. And they're motivating the crowd. And they come and they're asked the following question. So imagine a millionaire who has a company and they're asked the question, when do I know I'm ready to begin? And their answer tends to be about the same from different people. And that is the problem that we see with these young individuals is that they continuously read and they lead and they learn and they learn and they learn and they never take action. Now, how are you going to start until you actually take action? You'll never be fully prepared, period. Period. You have to put yourself on the road. You have to. And yes, learning is important. But all that knowledge is not going to actually get you on the road. You have to start and learn as you grow as well. So you need both. Now what happens with believers is that you have people who focus a lot on knowledge, but they don't really act. And you have people who act but have no knowledge. And both are dangerous. Both are dangerous. The middle path is what? You learn as you go. You learn as you go. You need both. You learn as you go. You have to do both. I'm going to spend some time learning and some time acting. Now, for one example, the first example, the one who knows but doesn't act. This is what they call the example of the corrupt scholar. Why are they corrupt? Because they have the knowledge, but they're not living that knowledge. So the person becomes corrupted by that. And the other one is the example of a worshiper. They're acting, but their lack of knowledge creates gaps for the shaitan to corrupt the person. And it happens a lot. It happens a lot. Look, a lot of these Sufi groups. My Sufism, I'm not saying all, right? There are plenty of scholars who are also Sufis. But I'm saying what's called the worshippers, the Ubbad, the Sufis, who, and this isn't exclusive to Sufism, by the way, but I'm just giving you an example, who are always worshiping and they have the clothing and they have the big hat and but over time you see how they kind of spiral out of control, become corrupt, they start involving themselves in poor behaviors. All that is the shaitan coming and deceiving the person because they are weak in knowledge. They can't detect the deception of the shaitan. Okay? But for the scholar, the corruption is that they get it, but they just lack the willpower to actually live it. They lack the willpower to live it. And so they end up resorting to their desires. They end up making choices out of laziness. I don't feel it. So we have to be careful of both. You have to learn, but you have to apply. And if you're applying, you have to balance that with knowledge. One or the other makes a person vulnerable to spiritual corruption that's very scary. Now, sometimes what happens with a person is that it's easy for them to pursue one, but difficult for them to pursue the other. So it's easier for them, they have this type of passion for reading and knowledge. So it's easier for them to learn, but when it comes to actually applying it, it's difficult. Or some people, it's the opposite. And Ibn Qayyim Rahmatullah Alayhi says that if you're finding difficulty, then remind yourself what's in front of you. Remind yourself of the dangers of not having one of these two. Remind yourself of the deceiver, Iblis, the shaitan, who's trying to deceive you. And if you leave one of these doors open, he can come at you through that. Imagine all of your efforts and all of your time spending, in the time that you spent doing what you're doing, all of that going to waste in the end. When doesn't the Prophet ﷺ say that there will be people who will do the actions of the people of paradise all their life, but shortly before they die, they start doing the actions of the people of hellfire? It's possible, right? Now, this is rare, by the way, so don't come all paranoid. This is rare. And there's a problem with that person in the first place, right? That's why they end up doing the actions of the hellfire. But the idea is that even though it's rare, it could still happen to me. It could. So how do I balance that? With a healthy balance of seeking knowledge and practicing it as well. Right? So remind yourself. And so it's necessary for both. ومن كان له هاتان القوتان استقام له سيره إلى الله تعالى ورجي له النفوذ. So whoever has both of these, then we are hopeful that they will be upright. But without one, or if one of them is weak, then they're vulnerable. وقوي على رد القواطع والموانع, and they'll have the ability to overcome the obstacles on that path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, that's by the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because be careful of that. It's one of the traps of the shaitan. Shaitan will come and say, man, you're doing really well. Your knowledge and your ibadah has really benefited you. What is he doing here? There's a trick here. What's his trick? Saying, mashallah, your salah is protecting you. Your fasting is protecting you. It's been doing you well. Your knowledge has been letting you kind of get through these obstacles, stay on the straight path.
It's massaging your nafs.
It's massaging your nafs. I know there's something even more sinister than that.
Could it be that because you think you're doing so much so you can relax and kind of...
Oh, you can do less.
do less?
Sure, but there's even something more sinister than that.
I think Shaitan is trying to make him like, okay, you are good enough. You are perfect. You don't have any deficiency, so that might lead to pride and arrogance.
Sure, you've been saying, everyone has been saying this, but there's something more sinister.
Oops, I didn't hear it. Sorry.
Like you feel like kibber. Yeah.
Again, you've all said this.
Yeah.
Repeat the question again.
Again, you keep going back to the same point.
No, is it like I'm so good? Is it like
The same thing.
same thing? Okay.
There's something, and that's bad, by the way. That's dangerous. But there's something even more sinister.
Okay, so we don't know. Please tell us.
If he comes and starts saying your salah has done this, you're this, and you're that, essentially what he's trying to do is to say that your safety is because of your own doing, not Allah.
Allah.
You see
I
that?
was thinking at one point.
For you to become dependent on what you do instead of Allah. Hence the story of Abdul Qadir Jilani that I told you before, when he saw a dream that Allah came to him saying that, oh, Abdul Qadir, I'm your Lord, I'm pleased with you, so, I have excused you from worship. Remember this?
So there must be shaitan.
Yeah. So I've told you this story before, right?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I've told it to you. So he does this, and then Abdul Qadir says, no, khasi'ta ya adu Allah. You have failed, O enemy of Allah. And so this image turns into the shaitan. And the shaitan tells Abdul Qadir, I love telling the story, even though I say it a lot. He said, the shaitan tells Abdul Qadir, I took countless worshippers to hellfire with this trick. Well, how did you catch me? He said, well, first of all, you said, I'm your Lord. You didn't say, I'm Allah. There's none worthy of worship except me. Like what he told Musa alayhi salam. And number two, Allah tells the Prophet to worship him until he dies. So if the Prophet wasn't excused from worship, who am I to be excused? And Shaitan comes and says, man, Abdul Qadir, your knowledge has saved you. Abdul Qadir said, no, it's Allah who saved me, not my knowledge. So, you see the trick? It's a dangerous trick. So, bihawlillah, Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi says, correctly so. If you have the knowledge and you have the action, then by the permission of Allah, by Allah's favor upon you, you'll be okay. Not because of these things. SubhanAllah. ولولا, and then this is a beautiful point. ولولا القواطع والآفات لكانت الطريق معمورة بالسالكين. If it wasn't for these obstacles on the road, then there would be a lot of people on the road. And there'll be nothing unique about it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows the shayateen to come and play around, allows there to be difficulties in life. Why? So that that road is actually meaningful. Because if everybody's on it, it's no longer interesting. Do you want to be wearing a shoe that everybody wears? Do you? No. Although I buy clothes from Costco, I don't like wearing it to the masjid. Why? Because so many people have it. I always find people to say, I know where you got that from, Costco, right? It's just weird. We don't like that. So if the road is easy, the road to Allah, the path of Allah is easy, everybody will be on it. And then it's kind of like, whatever, what is this? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His wisdom allows there to be some ups and downs, some bumps, some speed bumps on that road. Why? So that the one who's on it is truly in a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's truly on something valuable.
Still on the 10th or the 9th?
Oh, no, we passed that.
Oh, how many
Yeah, we
were
passed
there?
that. There were 10 about the first one, preserving our thoughts. And then we said the second way to istiqamah is the afterlife. Making sure that the afterlife is on your mind constantly, making sure that the afterlife is your goal. And then Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah adds to that, and that part of istiqamah is having that balance between knowledge and action. Allah Ta'ala, let's go ahead and stop here. Sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.